Welcome all to this, the 60th commencement of Methodist Theological School in Ohio. You have come here to be a part of the lives of these graduates, the life of this institution. Today, you all gather in community to be a part of a time of transition. Welcome. Please be seated. Would you join me, please, in a word of prayer? Gracious and loving God, whom we know in many ways and by many names, we gather in this place as your people, seeking to be servants in your name. Oh God, we come here from many different directions. We come along paths that might well have diverged and never brought us into one another's company. And yet we've ended up on paths that converge, that have brought us into one another's company and into deeper and more full fellowship with you. Oh God, be with us in this time. May we draw from your presence that which will influence us now and in our time going forward. Amen. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our opening hymn. Please be seated. Yesterday on this campus, for the first time in a couple of years, that could be said about a number of things, but for the first time in a couple of years, the MTSO Board of Trustees met, discussed a little bit about the life of the school they hold in trust, and as is their custom, they were presented with the names of the graduates. A lot went into putting that list together. You've been voted on a number of times. The faculty vote was important. They know you. The trustee vote is important because it's the final say. This is a point where I let you know how many made the cut. 100%. We knew you and your family would be dressed up. So we put aside any concerns, any rumors we've heard, and you all received a vote. Seriously, there are people beyond the folks you see in this place who care about you, about your studies, and about what you will do when you leave here. The trustees are those who deeply care and give of their time so that we all have work to do and the means with which to do it. I want to introduce to you Reverend Cindy Garn, who is the current chair of the trustees, MTSO, or might I say MTSO grad of 1981. She's been on the board for 20 years. She knows what it's like to be in your chair and in most of the chairs around here. She also happens to be my pastor. Give her a word of welcome, a round of applause.
Thank you, Jay. And I will confirm that the vote was 100%. So I know you might have been worried during rehearsal yesterday, but it actually was 100%. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Methodist Theological School in Ohio, congratulations to each and every one of you. To your families and those who have supported and walked through life with you, I know they've been important and will continue to be. I encourage you to take to heart and mind the message of the hymn intertwined in this service today. Allow faith and learning to continue moving together through your life and ministry, a dance of sorts, moving you closer to God and to the call to be all that you can be. May God bless you with a deep sense of wonder, a firm call for justice, a heart of compassion, a spirit of generosity, and a ministry filled with grace. God bless you this day and evermore.
Friends, you know it's a big day when there are multiple introductions. I now have the opportunity to introduce our speaker for the day. When I was in seminary some time ago in a place far, far away, in a ceremony something like this, it wasn't graduation, but people were dressed like this. Our preacher was a bishop from Kenya by the name of Imathiu. That bishop has a daughter who I would subsequently learn when I came here 16 years ago was a graduate of MTSO. She is back. She was here in 1987. Again, someone in your chair who has shown that great things can happen when you get up and leave your chair. When you're done here today, you have people to follow who set a great precedent and who have raised the bar. It's important work, and she will help you understand how that can be done with strength and with grace. Earlier this spring, as a part of our Schooler Institute on Preaching, we gathered a number of our alums for Zoom video chats about preaching in the pandemic and post-pandemic. How was it? What did you learn? What were your struggles? How have you been changed? One of the early sessions involved Chris George, one of our D-Min graduates from Georgia, and Pastor Grace. I was still stuck on my questions. How did you handle this when it first started? And Grace talked a little bit about the pressure of stepping into a sanctuary with nobody in it. Now you have to understand where she comes from. First United Methodist Church, Evanston. If Protestantism has a cathedral in the Midwest, it is that church. It is one of the grand edifices of Protestantism. So picture that, a sanctuary in a stone building with stone towering windows and organ pipes all around, empty, except for the stuffed animals that people brought and put in the pew to give her comfort. She also went by the pews and prayed for the people who weren't there, the people who would be joining online, but for her, the people she was pastoring to. Grace fills one of the storied pulpits of Methodism. And yet she sat here just like you. She holds it all together for us. Welcome her, please.
President Jay Rundell, Board of the Trustees, Chair Cindy Garn, Dean Valerie Bridgman, Acting Dean Yvonne Zimmerman, faculty, parents, children, friends, class of 2022, peace and grace to you. What an honor to be the commencement speaker on this day. I kept asking, why me? And the answer came back as it always does, why not? So first the text. Matthew chapter 1, beginning at verse 2. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron, and Hezron was the father of Aram, and Aram was the father of Aminadab. Aminadab was the father of Nahshon. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Boaz was the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been the wife of Uriah. Solomon was the father of Rehoboam. Rehoboam was the father of Abijah. Abijah was the father of Asaph. Asaph was the father of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was the father of Joram. Joram was the father of Uzziah. Uzziah was the father of Jotham. Jotham was the father of Ahaz. Ahaz was the father of Hezekiah. Hezekiah was the father of Manasseh. Manasseh was the father of Amos. Amos was the father of Josiah. Josiah was the father of Jeconiah and his brothers. This was the time of the exile to Babylon. After the exile to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel. Shealtiel was the father of Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel was the father of Abiud. Abiud was the father of Eliakim. Eliakim was the father of Azor. Azor was the father of Zadok. Zadok was the father of Akim. Akim was the father of Eliud. Eliud was the father of Eleazar. Eleazar was the father of Mathan. Mathan was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called the Messiah. The word of God for the people of God. I bet you did not expect that text, huh? I forgot what my graduation text was, although my father was my commencement speaker, and I helped him with the speech, and I did not want you to forget your text. But let me give you a pastoral warning. Do not try this text at home. You could get hurt. A few years ago in a church I was serving in Wisconsin, I read this very text to a packed Christmas Eve worship service. I have no idea how I came to imagine that that would even be close to a good idea on a Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, snow gently falling outside, people dressed in their reds and greens. The CEOs were there. You know, CEOs, Christmas, Easter only. Everybody ready to be done with baby Jesus and go home and wait for Santa. Everybody loves Christmas Eve because they know what to expect. They expect angels, shepherds, wise men, a virgin, and a baby. And they know the hymns. First, O come, O ye faithful, and then at the end, Silent Night, Holy Night. But that Christmas Eve, I pulled the begats on them. And it did not go well. Let me tell you, people in church will forgive you everything except when you mess with their nostalgia. Don't mess with Christmas Eve. Don't believe the rumor that says that 6 years later, that's why the bishop moved me elsewhere. You know, that text is not begats, that is a parade. Before Jesus is born, Matthew holds a parade, and Matthew surprises us about who turns up in God's parade, the good, the bad, the ugly. Some of them we say, what? They turned up? Who let them in? It's God's parade. Look at David, the sexiest man alive. And here comes Solomon. Solomon who makes Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos look poor. And look, there is Ruth, an immigrant woman from south of the border. She is without the legal anchoring of a husband or a child. Is she even legal? And here comes Jacob. He's got a limp. He actually dared to wrestle with God. We knew how that was going to turn out, but anyway, it was fun watching. And over there, Bathsheba, say her name, because on this day 87 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Bathsheba is surely a woman who experiences war where women become the spoils. Matthew's parade. Don't look away. Everybody is there. Short people, tall people, smart people, and not so smart people, straight people and queer people. Betcha, class of 2022, one day I know who your favorites will be. When you hear Jeconiah and his brothers, that they are in the parade holding signs saying, we survived the exile, class 2022. I know you're going to say, those are my people. We survived the exile called COVID-19. Class of 2022, on this, your graduation day, your eyes focused on the future, you are asked to pause and look at the rear view mirror of the parade of those who made the path that you have walked these past 2, 3, 4, and more years in this place. Somebody made that path, lest you forget that you are not here because you pulled yourselves up by your own bootstraps. Listen up, theological boots do not have bootstraps. None of us is self-made. To get where any of us is, there have been privileges bestowed on us. There have been sacrifices made for us. There has been support given to us by parents, by spouses, by our children, by our teachers and mentors and churches, and by donors and by those who loved us and we knew not. Class of 2022, today is not just your day. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is an MTSO day. MTSO is a character in God's parade. Your story is not just your story. This is about us. Yes, you thought you had cried enough this week. Today is God's own. This is us. Somebody break the Kleenex. When I graduated from MTSO, my teacher, mentor, and friend, Van Boga Dunn, gave me a copy of his book entitled God With Us. We called him Bogey. Bogey is the man who had memorized the entire Gospel of Mark. Once a year, we would gather in the Centrum, and for 1.5 hours, Bogey would recite from memory the entire Gospel of Mark. When I graduated and returned to Kenya, I decided to be a bogey. I would stand waiting for the bus at the bus stop with note cards of the Gospel of Mark, and I would remember to pronounce and to memorize, even as I slept, even as I walked, to memorize the Gospel of Mark. I must admit I'm no bogey. I got as far as chapter 3. Then there was funerals to be had and weddings and the stewardship campaign. Van Boga Dunn wrote a book, God With Us. And in his preface, Bogey says, I am convinced that God's presence with us is not only in our religious experiences, but in the whole range of our humanity. I tell you, class of 22, when you see God's parade and you look, you will see Bogey waving you on. This God's parade is not just religious highs. This God's parade that we're invited to takes our whole humanity. The successes are invited, the failures are invited, the laughter is invited, the tears, the anger, the shame, the mercy, the grace, the beauty, all of it is invited to God's parade. Name after name after name. That is not name after name after name. That is story after story after story. And after the 48th camel has come by, here comes Jesus, the Messiah, riding on a donkey. Class of 2022, when you talk about Jesus, the Messiah, you also have to remember that he didn't just get there. You have to remember the Heilsgeschichte, the salvation history. You see, I learned something at this place. Class of 2022, the parade is your cheerleaders. As you go out into the big, bad, broken world where there is no safety of the grades that gives you a pat on the back and gives you a well done, atta girl, when you go out there where there is no one to cheer you on, you need to remember the parade, and once in a while, bring out the parade so that you remember you are not journeying alone. Matthew wrote this parade in the 1st century, and since then, the parade has grown. Look over there, Peter and John and Andrew joined the parade, Bartimaeus and Lazarus and Mary and Martha, and over there, the first preacher of Easter Sunday, Mary from Magdala is there. And oh my, there is Fortina, the luminous one. Who is she? She is the Samaritan woman at the well, say her name. And Paul and Silas and Augustine and John Wesley and Sarah Cosby and Francis Asbury and Harry Hoosier and Jarena Lee and Georgia Harkness, Martin Luther King Jr., Matiba. Oh, and here is MTSO. We are in that God parade. We are a character of God's parade. I joined the MTSO parade in the fall of 1985. I chose MTSO because my dad knew the president of the seminary, Buford Dickinson. They had met in Claremont. Buford surprised me because he had been born and bred in the segregated society in Mississippi. He was a sign to me that just because of where you are born does not mean that's the way you're gonna be forever. You see, in January 1963, he was only, was it 29 or 30 years old? He was a pastor in Decatur when the first Black student was admitted to the University of Mississippi. All hell broke loose with the students' admission to university. The community rioted. Who would have thunk that getting an education is a threatening political act? They didn't put it that way, but I think they thought that white people were going to be replaced. The riots left someone dead and many injured, property destroyed. And in response, Reverend Buford Dickinson, in whose courtyard you are graduating today, the Dickinson courtyard, joined 27 other white Methodist ministers in Mississippi. They risked it and they signed a statement called Born of Conviction. It was, I quote, a short statement which upheld the equality of all before God and supported public schools as a bedrock institution of the American Republic, end of quote. I tell you, I read that conviction, born in conviction, that statement, and this is what I know. Methinks that's the original Black Lives Matter. That is white people interrupting white people, because only white people can interrupt white people. Just like straight people interrupting straight people, because straight people have to interrupt straight people. Just like men interrupting men, because men have to interrupt other men. And those white pastors paid a price. Class of 2022, you ain't seen nothing until you see church people angry. I tell you, church people will skin you alive, and they will say it is because they love God and it is for your good. And they will find a verse in the Bible to support their bigotry. I tell you, white supremacy is so shameless. Not only will it steal the life of an 18-year-old child, steal the life of an 18-year-old child and arm him with crazy ideas and put guns and bullets in his hands so that he might go out and shoot grandmothers. White supremacy is so shameless. It will slither into the pews and park itself in the pulpit wearing a collar and a stole. I tell you, white supremacy steals lives, and you are called to be born of the conviction that all lives matter to God in this theological arena. Stand up. I tell you, just for standing up for a young Black body to get an education in 1963 in Mississippi, several of the born of conviction ministers were immediately locked out of their churches. One had his car tires slashed, and one pastor had a cross burned on his lawn. There is always a price to pay. Yeah. You could lose your appointment, you know, or you could take a pay cut. But don't fret. If you lose an appointment for the sake of the kingdom,
you will provide, God will provide you with something much more glorious, because indeed, what a mighty God we serve. Because in God's life adventure with God, you will go places. Dr. Sue says it well for you. You will go places, and then things start to happen. Don't worry, don't stew, just go right along. You'll start happening too. All the places you'll go with God, and you're not alone. There's a very good chance you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants. There are some down the road between hither and yon that can scare you so much you won't want to go on, but you will go on. Though the weather be foul, on you will go. Though the enemies prowl, on you will go. On frightening creek, through the arms, you will succeed. Yes, you will. Class of 2022, kid, you'll move mountains. After signing that born of conviction statement, when things were getting heated up, Buford Dickinson had a visitor. The vice president at Claremont School of Theology traveled to Mississippi and offered Buford Dickinson a position at Claremont, effective a month soon. The Dickinsons moved to Claremont. 18 years later, Buford then moved from Claremont and joined the MTSO parade, inaugurated the second president of the Methodist Theological School in Ohio. I joined MTSO when Buford Dickinson was president, and I tell you, you would not have known he was an activist. He looked so normal. He was kind and gentle and did not even brag. I did not even know about his activism until his funeral. Class of 2022. Here you are graduating at the Dickinson courtyard, where I too have sat. Buford perhaps reminding you to not leave seminary without being born of conviction. MTSO, the MTSO parade is in my blood. Explains why on August 26, 2019, at the invitation of Kenya Ethiopia Annual Conference Bishop, I led a Bible study for their third annual conference held in Meru, Kenya. I must admit that although I was planning to be strong and bold, my voice started to shake only 5 minutes into the Bible study, because I did not expect two WCA members from Texas to walk in just about then. But you know, it says, speak the truth even if your voice trembles. And so my voice was shaking as I spoke and led the Bible study. I tell you, after that Bible study at the clergy session, I asked the bishop out loud in front of everybody, Bishop, what are the protocols of my church at Evanston partnering with a church here in Kenya, with a congregation here in Kenya? And the bishop said, go ahead, Grace. Work directly with any pastor who invites you. 2 days later, a pastor from a little town on the shores of Lake Victoria that's not even on any map texted me. We had lunch, and he told me about his congregation. I was surprised. It turns out that 10 years before, an intersex child was born in that congregation. And rather than kill the child or abandon the child and the family, that little church, with most of the people who had not even finished high school, they decided to learn more about human diversity and sexuality. And so for 10 years, they had been quietly, holy conversing and researching. There are things happening out there that you don't know about. Right. I tell you, they went on, and as they learned more about human diversity, some of their members who had been closeted dared to speak their truth. And when they invited me over, I boarded a tiny aircraft, flew from Nairobi to Homa Bay, and we landed on it was a soccer field that was pretending to be an airport. We drove to the little church. I spent 3 days in Bible studies with them, but you know what? I learned much more than I had gone to teach. I began collecting questions I had no answers to. I began being gifted with new ways of seeing Jesus. I began falling in love with Jesus again. I learned so much about human sexuality and diversity. I learned that the language is already booby-trapped, that the words for LGBTQI siblings are often such shameful words. It became a Pentecost moment where I learned a whole new way of speaking. I learned how to use words that do not cause further harm. I learned that they had words that they no longer spoke. I learned about the diversity that God indeed made Adam and Eve and everyone in between. I acquired a whole new vocabulary. It felt like the first day at MTSO when Jeff Hopper was saying existential and hermeneutics and homiletics and eschatological and apologetics. I will never forget Old Testament 101 when somebody said, what exactly is exegesis? And without blinking an eye or smiling, Dr. Everett Tilson, we called him E.T., replied, exegesis is a retired Messiah. And at that point, I did not have a theological sense of humor. And so I wrote it down like it was my notes. So there I was by Lake Victoria. You see, sometimes you go somewhere to be a blessing and you find out that God sent you there to bless you. Class of 2022, wherever God sends you, God is sending you to bless you. And MTSO has given you the capacity to learn and to be humble in your learning. And that Sunday morning in Moheto, everybody in the congregation showed up, about 100 members of that, and they had a special church meeting, unanimously voted to become a reconciling congregation, the first reconciling congregation in Africa, the first reconciling congregation outside the United States. I was there, and so were you, because we are in the parade together. I tell you, as you get your papers this morning, you join the parade. And class 22, when we look at class 22 in the parade of the future, we are going to say, you are exactly what resilience looks like. We are going to remember how you sat at your kitchen table and learned how to do technology. We will remember how you showed up in a Zoom box and pretended to be okay when you were not okay. We will remember, and we will be grateful for you. And in it all, we will remember you with joy. Thank you for joining this parade. Thank you for joining this parade. Remember that best of all, in the past, in the future, God with us. Amen. Amen.
Oh my. Now that you're seated, let us rise. In body or in spirit, we have another verse. Please be seated.
Will the candidate for the Doctor of Ministry degree please stand? The Doctor of Ministry degree is designed to provide professionals in ministry with advanced skills for critically and theologically engaging issues and their contexts in ways that contribute to vital faith communities and institutions. The degree requirements include completion of a major research project. The research project must demonstrate integration of insights and resources from heritage and practical disciplines and is to grow out of or be related to a particular issue of concern identified in the student's current place of professional ministerial practice. This candidate for the Doctor of Ministry degree has completed all degree requirements and by vote of the faculty and Board of Trustees is presented to you for the conferral of the degree.
By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees in the state of Ohio, and upon recommendation of the faculty, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Ministry with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. Congratulations.
The candidate for the Master of Arts in Counseling Ministries degree is joining us remotely. The MACM program seeks to equip persons with broad theological foundations, psychological and behavioral sciences, grounding and counseling skills to help troubled persons, families, and communities find meaning, healing, and growth. This candidate for the Master of Arts in Counseling Ministries degree has completed all degree requirements and by vote of the faculty and Board of Trustees is presented to you for the conferral of the degree.
By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees in the state of Ohio, and upon recommendation of the faculty, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Master of Arts in Counseling Ministries with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. Congratulations.
Will the candidate for the Master of Arts in Practical Theology degree please stand? By nurturing personal and public liberating Christian faith, the MAPT program seeks to equip persons to provide leadership for the formation of individuals and communities. Each MAPT student is required to specialize in one of 4 areas: ecology and justice, parish and community ministry, spiritual formation and small group ministry, or youth and young adult ministry. This candidate for the Master of Arts in Practical Theology degree has completed all degree requirements and by vote of the faculty and Board of Trustees is presented to you for the conferral of the degree.
By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees in the state of Ohio, and upon recommendation of the faculty, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Master of Arts in Practical Theology with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. Congratulations.
Will the candidates for the Master of Arts in Social Justice degree please stand? The Master of Arts in Social Justice degree program equips persons to lead, organize, educate, and collaborate in diverse social, political, religious, and educational contexts. The MASJ offers an interdisciplinary core curriculum combining ethics, theology, public leadership, sacred texts, and spirituality. These candidates for the Masters of Arts in Social Justice degree have completed all the degree requirements and by vote of the faculty and Board of Trustees are presented to you for the conferral of the degree.
By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees in the state of Ohio, and upon recommendation of the faculty, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Master of Arts in Social Justice with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. Congratulations.
Will all the candidates for the Master of Divinity program degree please stand? We live in a rapidly changing and complex world in need of the reconciling love of God and the liberating message of the gospel. The Master of Divinity program prepares persons who will proclaim God's good news that liberates from brokenness, whose sources may be personal, interpersonal, institutional, ecological, and societal. The program prepares students to practice and lead theological practices that promote ministries of personal wholeness, faithful and hospitable community, and justice. These candidates for the Master of Divinity degree have completed all degree requirements and by vote of the faculty and Board of Trustees are presented to you for the conferral of the degree.
By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees in the state of Ohio, and upon recommendation of the faculty, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Master of Divinity with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. Congratulations.
This completes the conferring of the degrees. Please rise, embody your spirit, and join in singing verse 3 of the hymn as we prepare for the hooding of the Doctor of Ministry graduate and the presentation of diplomas to all members of the class of 2022.
You may be seated. I'm on the privilege and off script. I'm gonna do this culturally for the Black folk in the room. Reverend Grace, hallelujah. Everybody else was sitting on their hands trying not to do that, so I thought I would just let you do it. One other moment of privilege, congratulations to each one of you. I already said how very proud I am of you, and I wanted to say it publicly. I'm very proud of you. Now, the custom of hoods as a component of academic regalia began when medieval monks' cloaks included head-warming cowls, things we don't need today. Today, the academic hood communicates the owner's school, degree, and field of study through its length and the color of the lining and binding. We will now hood the graduate of the Doctorate of Ministry program. Lucas Virgil Linden, specialization in leadership for transformational change. Lucas's project title is Belonging at the End of the Aberrant Time, adaptive leadership as discernment for the church. will now present to you the recipients of the master's degrees of the class of 2022. In absentia, we provide the Master of Arts in Counseling Ministries, the Pastoral Care and Counseling Track diploma to Brenda Fleming. Receiving a diploma in the Master of Arts in Social Justice, Joelle Call. Martha K. Mbamba. Danielle Jones. Hank Osmondson. Michael Primo. In absentia, Mark D. Reed. Timothy Van Zatz. For the Master of Divinity diplomas, Greg A. Bush. Marcella Valandia Chicotelli. I'm laughing at myself. Brian Lee Darty. I had to practice his name 5 times yesterday. Twana Talisha Gauds with the specializations in Black Church and African Diaspora Studies and in chaplaincy. Caitlin Glover with specialization in ecology and justice. Sanwa Hopgood. Michelle Lynn Meaford with specializations in Black Church and African Diaspora Studies and in chaplaincy. Rebecca Aaron Milne. Damon Princeton Penn Neighbor, specializations in Black Church and African Diaspora Studies and in ecology and justice. Alicia Gay Boyer Orsina, specialization in spirituality. Alicia also is receiving a Master of Arts in Practical Theology degree with a specialization in youth and young adult ministry. Antonia Grace Rancarello, specializations in interreligious context and in Unitarian Universalist studies. Elizabeth Spadell, specializations in chaplaincy and in ecology and justice. Gwendolyn Bridgman Thomas. I was trying to hold it together. Paula M. Vergoven. Hannah Grace Wickizer. Timothy Wood with a specialization in ecology and justice. Ashley Marie Nguyen. Now, everybody join me in congratulating every last one of these graduates. If you will, please stand in body or in spirit and join us in the last verse of the hymn of the day.
Please be seated. We've done this ceremony a number of times over the years. We bring you back one last time to send you forth. For you, it's been a little bit different. We barely knew you, at least face to face. You are the class that got in on a little bit of this campus before the pandemic. For the most part, you've been online. So it seems kind of odd after you finally got back to send you on your way. But here we are. You're a special class. Every class is special. You're the smallest class in number this school has ever had. You know, the pandemic has something to do with that, I believe. But that puts something of a burden on you. The impact on the world is spread among fewer of you. So we need to get on our way today and get you going. You've got the work of more than a few to do. But as you've heard, you stand in the line of a long people, you're begotten somewhere. Yeah. I have to go back and read that passage. I think maybe this one is in the original begats, of Matthew. This has been a journey, and yet it is a beginning. You're off to do the work you've been preparing to do. I hope you don't believe the study is over. I mentioned the Board of Trustees a moment ago that Cindy represents. They did another thing yesterday. They passed a budget. Now that may seem mundane and might not seem relevant to those of you who now have your diploma. But buried deep in that budget was a line item for the library called acquisitions, which means there are books in this library that you haven't read. Remember that. There's a lot more to read. You've done some reading, but there's more to be read. As you come and gather here, look around. Look at each other. You're the people who have made this experience work. You're the ones who have raised the questions. The faculty behind you have been working for some time, honing their questions for you. And I believe them when they say they aren't looking for specific answers, just good answers. But we don't know all the questions. We're different because of you. And we'll probably ask some tougher questions of the people who come after you because of you. But give this moment some thought. This is a transition. But it's also a time to leave. Now, those of you who haven't been on the campus a lot, I like to ask people around here to walk around this beautiful place and in particular, go down and look at the pond. Don't look too long because it's a mess. Problem with our pond is the flow of water is too big for the dam and it backs up, clogs up, and just festers. And it stinks. When something stays here too long, it's not what it's supposed to be. At its best, that water comes through here, nurtures what happens here, picks up a little silt, takes a little silt, but it flows somewhere else. It's time for you to go, folks. Go in grace, go in peace, take something from here, leave something behind, come back for a visit, but go do what you've been preparing to do, and for goodness sake, surprise us with what you do. Go now in grace and peace. Blessings, friends.